everybody. Get ready for a really amazing interview that we had with the director of Sled National Team for USA Hockey, Dan Brennan, today on Our Kids Play Hockey. But of course, before every episode, we want to let you know that we're being powered by Hockey Wraparound. Head over to hockeywraparound.com for 20% off your purchase using the code OKPH. Check out our new product, the Dry Stick. We are completely disrupting how equipment is dried. That's all I'm going to say. Head over to hockeywraparound.com to check that out. The code is obviously also working on all of the Hockey Wraparound products that we have. So with that said, enjoy this interview with Dan Brennan. It is a really impactful one. I really enjoyed it. So did Christy and Mike. It's starting now on Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm joined as always by Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano-Burns, and we are privileged today to have Dan Brennan, the director of Sled National Teams for USA Hockey, with us today. In his current role, Dan has helped the United States claim an unprecedented 3 straight Paralympic gold medals in 2010, 2014, and 2018, 3 world championships in 2009, 2012, and 2015, 6 World Sled Hockey Challenge titles, 2009, 2012, 2015, 2016 in January, and 2016 in December, and 2017. He also has seen the United States win a number of other international events, including the 2013 USA Hockey Sled Cup, the 2016 IPC Pan-Pacific Championship, and the 2018 Turin Para Ice Hockey International Tournament. In addition to his role with the sled hockey team, Dan has also been involved with USA Hockey's national inline team for the past 16 seasons, including the last 11 as its general manager. If that part of his resume wasn't enough, he also played 4 years at Colorado College from 1982 to 1986. Sorry to date you there, Dan, where he served as the team captain his final 2 seasons, which he followed up with a 3-year professional career in Sweden. He is clearly a hockey lifer, and we are privileged to have him on the show here today with us. Dan, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks. I appreciate the intro very much.
Well, it's not my, hey, it's your intro. That's the most numbers I've ever had to read on an intro. I'm going to say that I feel like I did a pretty good job with it, but no, look, we wanted to put them in there just to give the audience an idea of not just how long you've been involved in the game, but your success with the program. So as we said in the open, you're a hockey lifer. The first question I have is, when did you realize that this would be something you wanted to dedicate your life to professionally?
Well, I think I'm a product of the real world, meaning when I stopped playing hockey, I got a job in the real world, and I did it for, 3 years. And I think at the tail end of that 3rd year is when I really started to miss the game again. And that was back in '95. And I was very fortunate to have one of my former coaches recommend me at USA Hockey. So I interviewed and things went great. I had just got my US citizenship, which was really important to me. And I got hired, and that was 25 years ago.
Wow. You said you got your US citizenship. You're native of?
Yeah, I grew up in Vancouver. I left there basically when I was 18. And it's been an amazing run, and starting at Colorado College all the way through what I get to do at USA Hockey, it was really important to me to be a US citizen and to kind of respect and be thankful for all things that have been bestowed upon me as an individual. So,
no, that's awesome. I would say now we got to put you on the same level as Brett Hull. So for all those hockey fans in the 1990s, but no, that's awesome. So you obviously came here to play college hockey, and I know what you're talking about. You know, I know there are people in our audience, because I've been asked by them, like, how do I get a job in the game, right? How do I stay involved in the game? And the truth is this, I knew really early on there was not going to be an illusion in my mind that I was not going to be involved in the game in some facet for the rest of my life. And I do understand sometimes when people stop playing, they want to break. Totally get that. But all roads lead back to the game in some form or fashion. And I think it's awesome that you've completely embraced that, and that you've literally made not just a career, but a championship career in the game. And that's going to lead us into it. What attracted you to the sled program? Tell us about the sled program. Obviously for the audience that might, everybody probably knows what sled hockey is, but tell us a little bit about it and how you get involved.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run. And, for me, it starts with the great players we have, and then also the great staff we have, which, for me, my philosophy with the team, I've been with the team now 16 years, is always hire great people and let them do their jobs. And I've really sworn to be. It's hard sometimes, you know, because when you're overseeing something, you want to make sure everything's going well. But, you know, we have an unbelievable staff, our medical people. We don't have any altercations. When they say, hey, this is the way it should be, then we go with it, because we have so many different disabilities on our team. We have, you know, on our national team, we have 8 warrior players who lost, you know, legs in Afghanistan, Iraq. We have cancer survivors. We have players who were born without legs. We have players who are born with spina bifida. So they all kind of come together in this melting pot and get along famously, which is really amazing. But how I got involved was in 06, right after Torino, the United States Olympic Committee, which is now the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, wanted to release that sport. They were overseeing the sport at the time to USA Hockey. They felt that, you know, it was up our alley to run it. And then my late great friend Jimmy Johansson came into my office one day and said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, doing what? And he said, well, the sled team. And I said, well, yeah, I'm interested, but what do I have to do? Like, I had no background in just people with disabilities or any of those things. And he said, just be you, you'll be fine. And that was all the advice I got. So I just ran with it. You know, I wish I could tell you I had some sled mentor, but I've had plenty of mentors in ice hockey, and I just draw on those people. But so it's been an amazing run for me since 06. And that's kind of how it came along. And our team has gone from being, you know, very young and inexperienced to now being a real dominant force in the sport. And for people who don't know what it is, I always kind of get a kick out of describing it. It's, you know, picture yourself in a sled with 2 hockey sticks in your hand, with vicious, sharp picks at the end of each butt end. And you're trying to carry a puck, skate at the same time while someone else is trying to, you know, lay you up. So, and the one thing that sled hockey players deal with that able-bodied players don't, a couple of things. One, they don't skate backwards. We have some players that can, but it's just not recommended in the sport. It's too difficult. But you know, when they go into a physical situation, like especially when we play Canada, it's violence at some point. But when they go into the boards, there's no give, because they're not stand-up players. So they don't go into the glass part that has a give to it. They're right where the stanchions are. So when they have their collisions, it's loud and you know, painful. So they're an amazing group of people on all countries, not just ours. I mean, for what they do and for the love they have for the game, it's an incredible thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
And Dan, I had the opportunity to actually cover one of our sled hockey competitions. The Skinny Atlas Ice Arena hosted one. And I have to tell you, there was nothing disabled about it. My goodness, the speed, the agility, just the athleticism, the incredible sharp turns. I was mesmerized. It's amazing, just absolutely amazing. They are so strong athletically. There's got to be a lot of training that goes into this, I would think.
There's a massive amount of training, and I'm glad you said that, Christy, because they are so dedicated now. I've tried being in a sled 4 times, but I kind of refuse to do it with our team now, because for them it's like get even day, you know. It's like so I'm barely out there 5 seconds and 2 guys are knocking me around, and I'm just like so dejected because they're so talented. I can't even compare. Like, I try and tell people, if they're going to try it, to take the blades on the bottom of the bucket and spread them out a good 6 inches. Because when you first tried it, and if you sit in one of our national team players' sleds, it's like being in the Atlantic Ocean with 1 oar in the water. It's amazing. Like, when you watch them play, you think they only have 1 blade, but there's actually 2. They're just so close together. And that's what helps them turn and move so fast. So you're right. Wow. There's absolutely nothing disabled about them. In fact, there's guys on our team that shoot the puck harder than a lot of guys I played with growing up, without question.
You know, one of the things that I love about this, first off, I love that description of being in the Atlantic Ocean with 1 oar. That's actually a really great way of looking at it. One of the things that we strive for, and I think this is true for the game, and it's one of the missions of, you know, not just USA Hockey, but hopefully the NHL, is that, like, hockey is hockey. Women's hockey, they're hockey players. Disabled hockey, they're hockey players. Youth hockey, they're hockey players. We're all hockey players, right? And, look, God knows that the hockey community is very close knit, but it's also not big enough that we need any infighting. Right. So speaking of the parents out there and the coaches, I always wanted to say this, Dan, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it too, because you kind of alluded to it. If you ever have the chance to get your team to play with a sled hockey team, to get your team in the sled, not only will they learn a lot about overcoming adversity, and here's some amazing stories of perseverance to continue to play the game. But Dan, as you said, you're also going to get a pretty amazing workout in and realize that nobody's skill set is complete, right? So I think that there's not enough cooperation from able players to disabled players in terms of working together, because there's a tremendous amount we can learn from each other. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do 100%. Sometimes there's some insurance issues that kind of get in the way with having sled guys bombing around and able stand-up players because of the accidental contact and those things. But we've done a couple of things that were amazing. We first did it with my old school. We were training in Colorado Springs, and I asked the coach there, if we could, come on. They wanted to get in sleds. And you want to talk about, they spent a good 20 minutes playing with each other. And then when they were done, they spent another hour talking to each other.
Right.
And that's what I was really thrilled about, because, they found common ground. They're basically the same age. Our guys are a little bit older than a college team, but, and then we trained in Allentown, Pennsylvania a couple of years ago, and really, really great American Hockey League team, really good players on there. And they came up to us and asked if we could come out on the ice and do a promotional thing. And we said, absolutely. And what we did was we set up drills where they would do it first, and then we'd go. And in between those two, we would watch what they were doing and they would watch us. And then at the very end, they wanted to set up like kind of a half circle and shoot pucks on our goalies. And these are, obviously future flyers and those kind of things with real heavy shots. And our goalie, Steve Cash, he's played on our team now for, I think 17 years, and he's only 32. He's just, he's an amazing young man. So he's in the net. And these guys, they're like, well, I'm not going to shoot hard on them. They just start flicking pucks at him. So this one guy flipped his puck at him, this American League guy, and Stevie came out of his net and with one hand batted the puck over the glass and said, if you guys aren't going to shoot on me properly, I'm getting off the ice. And the guy goes, what do you say? I said, yeah, you're kind of embarrassing him. Shoot the puck. He goes, really? I go, yeah, shoot as hard as you can. All of a sudden, this guy goes, all right. And his first two shots, Steve just caught him and threw him back at him. He's like, oh my, he was in shock. But then they had a blast because there was common ground there. It wasn't out of the norm, So then they did that for another 15 minutes. And I was just blown away. I mean, you're right. If we can, every person involved in our great sport wants to be a hockey player, whether it's from our women's team, our sled team, our able-bodied guys, our youth guys, our special hockey, or warrior hockey, whatever it is. At the end of the day, and I've always sworn by this, if we just treat them like hockey players, the rest takes care of itself because it's such a great game.
Right. And
I think that,
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, just in that, in my experience with sled hockey, it was either through Chuck up in New York or Ron down with Florida sled hockey, and you obviously through, our relationship with the coaching education program. And one of the things that really, I think, stood out to me was, when you ask everybody, well, how do you coach these guys? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you approach them even conversationally? And both, like everybody that's in the sport says, well, you don't do anything differently. You treat them like athletes, and they're gonna play like athletes because they want that competitive spirit is in those players. So I mean, with the national team players that you're getting, I mean, how competitive does it get to make that team, from around the U.S. Like to put the, like we were saying, kind of off camera a little bit, just how competitive it is because of the numbers that are available to you. But really, maybe just tell us, how that process happens that you get to that team and how competitive it really is. That you truly have to be an athlete. You just don't, you're not just disabled. You actually have to be able to be, a player.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of amazing, volunteers and grassroots people. I mean, I will never take credit for this team prior to our staff and our volunteers out there. Everything I do is logistic. I'm one of the coaches, but to make our team is unbelievable. And for example, we had our tryout in Voorhees a few months back, and we had 68 players there. And from that 68, we're going to pick a national team of 17 and then a development team of another 17. And, there's 3 players on our development team that if we called up in a day, they wouldn't miss a thing. Our team would continue to go forward. It's not, it's very difficult to make our team, but it's even harder to stay on it. And our guys know that. And we went from a team, I think the sport in general, guys played it in the beginning as more of a recreational thing. They still want to have their fun away from the rink and all those things. And that's changed immensely. Our team is, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the new phone apps or everything, but I mean, they're coming up to me saying, my body fat's this and that. And I go, well, you won't be able to find mine on your chart. Leave me alone, kind of a thing. But it's an amazing transformation. So to answer your question, Mike, which I didn't do so far, but I'll try, it's very difficult to make our team. It used to be, like, for example, in 06, we were allowed 17 players. We had 19 players try out, and 2 of them were women. And I found out the night before the tryout was starting that women weren't allowed on the men's team. So I had to tell, it was a good news, bad news. Obviously, I had to tell the 2 ladies that were trying out, who were great players, they're still playing, that they couldn't be on the team. But I also told the other 17 that no one's being cut today. So it's transferred from that to now women are allowed to be on our team if they're good enough to take a spot. They have their own category as well. But, of the 17 that we picked this time, I would say we could have easily picked 21 and you wouldn't have noticed it unless you were working with them on a daily basis.
I think it's also important to note, and this is a misconception I see actually across sport. It's not just in hockey. When you get to the national level or the Olympic level in any sport, they're athletes and they're really good at what they do. I always love watching the Olympics and someone's watching water polo. I could do that. Like, no, you couldn't. No, you couldn't do that. All right. You think you could do it because you've never seen it, but you can't do that. And look, sled hockey players are no different. They are peak level athletes, as you said, Dan. And look, many of them, as you said, are veterans or they come from different backgrounds. Tell us a little bit, again, you alluded to it earlier, and you can be specific about some of the players if you want. Tell us about your player population. Again, it's a range from veterans, from accident victims, from people born with disabilities. Tell us about that diversity, because I think that's kind of amazing too, when you get that type of different population together to form a hockey team.
Yeah, it's a great question, Lee, because you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, when we first started having military guys join our team, they were kind of put on a pedestal because, a lot of our players dealt with their disability from the time they were born. So it's a little bit different versus a guy who, goes overseas and unfortunately, lands on an IED or whatever it is, and all of a sudden he's lost a leg. He knew exactly what it was like growing up being an able-bodied person. Right. So there's that dynamic. And what's amazing with our team is they say it best, and our military guys say it to our players all the time, our other players. All we've done is taken the American flag from our shoulder and put it on our chest. And they're thrilled by that. And I love hearing that, because it's like, right. Okay, these guys also just want to be hockey players. But the key is fitting in with each other. And the character on our team that a lot of our military guys have brought, along with the character of our team from just, the players that had different disabilities, is all the same now. There is no hierarchy. And that's what makes it special. Like, for example, when we go in and fix up the locker room before a camp or a competition, there was times back in the day where I had to physically move people's names around because I was worried about what our locker room would look like. And when our coaches leave the room, what's going to transpire in that room to maybe hurt our chances to compete well. Because, there were certain guys that didn't always get along. There were certain guys that, were interested in giving people a hard time before a game instead of pumping them up before a game. But now I could go in there with the 17 names and close my eyes and just throw them. And wherever they land, we could go with that and have absolutely no problem with the character in our room. And that in itself has made a tremendous difference. I mean, it's night and day now. I would say the team we have now would beat our team that won in Pyeongchang in 18 by 5 goals.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Dan, I was just curious, where are you fielding most of your talent? Are there specific areas of the country, and what's the average age of the athletes on your team?
That's a great question, Christy. You know, and once again, it goes back to our great grassroots people. Our disabled section has, you know, there's 2 gentlemen, JJ O'Connor and Jim Smith, who have put together kind of the grassroots blueprint, which has been amazing. So in other words, the thing that you want your youth players to get to is our national camp. And, you know, we've had players, usually they start out about 15 through 20 by going to this camp. And what happens is, you know, you mentioned Colin Gooley and Chuck Gridley, who are, you know, great people, obviously. It would be a Chuck Gridley who sees a Colin Gooley as a young man, or someone sees another player as a young lady, a young woman, and recommends them to this camp. And then when they get to that camp is run by our national team staff, our national team coaches. And now all of a sudden, you know, these people are going, oh, wow, my skills are being put in front of the top coaches. You know, this is pretty cool. And then from there, they get assigned. So, you know, if it's a 15 or 16-year-old girl and she's doing really well, chances are she'll be put on our women's team within a year or two. And that's kind of how the player pool is created. It starts at the grassroots level with recommendations for these kids to go to national camp. Then when they get there, I think the whole world opens up for them. And we've had challenges, you know, like it's difficult sometimes for parents who have raised their son or daughter with a pretty solid disability. And, you know, it's hard for them to let go. And we understand that. But it's just, you know, just for a weekend, and the parents are allowed to come and all that stuff. But to see them go from that to potential national team players is really, really neat. And our last camp we had was also in Voorhees before the tryout. And I watched 4 or 5 kids that are 14 and 15 that, you know, in 3 or 4 years are probably going to be on our team. And that's really exciting to see that. So there's a whole process, but I certainly can't take credit for it. It's those amazing people, those amazing volunteers out in out in the field, and who handle it at the grassroots level, who are the real heroes.
Yeah.
Dan, could you do me a favor too? We're talking about the top level here, which is amazing, but could you give us a little bit of the lay of the land of maybe sled hockey across the country? And, you know, obviously if people are looking for programs, where they should start, how many programs are there, the levels, just give us an overview of that as well, because to get to the top, you got to start somewhere, obviously. So.
Yeah. We have probably across the country between 1,200 and 1,500 sled players.
Wow.
That's male and female. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, people always ask me, like, how do we get a program started? And USA Hockey, prior to COVID, we had this sled lending program where we would ship 10 sleds to different places around the country. They got to use them for a couple of weeks and then ship them back. And that created an interest. And, you know, some of the stories we have, like there's some places that have, you know, 5 players with disabilities and they want to play, but they need another, you know, 7 or 8 to play with. Otherwise it's a tough game, right? It's a long way to skate up and down, and then no line changes. So one of the things we've recommended, and it's really worked, at the non-national team level, able-bodied people can play sled hockey. And they have like a quotient, it depends which league they're in, but usually they say they can have up to 3 able-bodied players. And what that's done is actually a really cool story. And I've seen it across the country is, you know, a father who's got a son with disabilities or a daughter with disabilities, it's probably, you know, well, geez, how can I connect with my own child? And I've seen it countless times where they jump in a sled and play on the same team with their kid. And the turnaround is amazing. Like it's one of my favorite things when I see at the youth level is some of those people jumping in. So there are areas where they have enough players that have disabilities where they can play sled hockey, and it's not a big deal. But in those other ones, when they're trying to grow the game, it's okay to have their buddies and their able-bodied, you know, parents jump in as well. And that's another part of it. Like, you know, a kid's 17, 18 years old, and he's got a friend. His friend's thinking, well, I'll just go and watch him play. It's a lot cooler to say, I'm going to go play with him. And that's been kind of a real growth spurt across the country as well.
That's phenomenal. And I love hearing stuff like that, because that's really what the game is all about when you bring it down to the lowest levels, is playing with your friends and playing with your family. And I do want to tap on what you said too, Dan, that able-bodied people can play this game. In fact, when I was living in the United Kingdom, I was really more or less watching their sled program develop. That's exactly what they did. They invited professional players from the country to come in and be on the sleds. They invited anybody just to get it going. And that is how they did it, right? And I think that brings us back to the point we were saying earlier. I wanted to say this. When we look at heroes, right? It's a funny word in this country, because when you're younger, it's Superman, Batman, Captain America, all those heroes. And then when you get a little older, right? And when you get older, it might be an NHL athlete, an NBA athlete. And heroes for me have always been people that have went through incredible strife and persevered, right? So veterans, people who serve in the military, sled hockey players fall into that group as well. And I want to make this clear distinction. And this is something I think a lot of people miss. It's not because I feel sorry for them. That's exactly the opposite of it. I'm inspired by them and what they've done, right? Trust me, no sled hockey player wants you to feel sorry for them. No veteran wants you to feel sorry for them, right? That's not where they come from. And I'm not making a joke here. They may be shorter than me when it comes to being on skates, but I look up to them, right? They're an anchor for me. And I think that that's something in the game. Our game is heavily siloed within itself, much less with other sports, right? So when I see sled hockey as a coach, not only do I see it as an incredible sport with incredible athletes, I see it as this massive opportunity for everyone to learn something from each other, right? And again, I just want you to dive into this again. You said that when the able-bodied players and the disabled players were in a room, they spent more time talking and learning from each other than they did even playing. That's the stuff we need to do more. Because at the end of the day, whether you make a national team or not, it's the life lessons that you draw out of the game that really make you who you are, right? You think about your career and what you've done, right? It's the game gave you the foundation for that. Hopefully parenting and other things too, right? It's not limited to just hockey. All right. But my point is that there's so much we can learn from each other that we leave on the table because we're so siloed, right? We're so focused on our team and our career, quote unquote. And as a parent, making sure our kids getting the best opportunities when there's so many life lessons out there. So I just wanted to come back to that for a quick second. And, I don't know if you remember any of those conversations between able-bodied players and disabled players, but like maybe walk us into that situation real quick and talk about what they spoke about.
Yeah. One of the greatest things is, you ask anyone who plays hockey, we don't need categories. You're hockey players.
Right.
The first thing they'll say is, what do you love most about the game? And our guys will say it's a freedom like I've never experienced before when I'm out on the ice. And that's an awesome, powerful thing to hear. And like for me, I thought joining this team would make me a better person, but their humor is so unbelievably deranged that I don't know if I've succeeded in that at all. But I'll give you an example. Like, when I first started working with them, we stopped having people carry their bags and those kind of things. And it made a tremendous difference. And now they're very protective of that. So, we've had a lot of guys help out from our other programs. And the first thing they say is, I love working with your team. I almost feel embarrassed. It's easier than working with an able-bodied team because they don't let you help yet. They don't want my help. The only thing they want me to do is sharpen their skates and make sure the tape's on the table and get out of the way. So it's kind of cool to hear that. For me personally, I remember the first time I started traveling with the team, and I used to be one of those guys, I can honestly admit it, that, you're standing in a security line and you're like, come on, they're wanding some, poor 75-year-old lady and it's taken forever. And, I just want to get through it. And I'm sitting there bitching to myself. And I started working with these guys and they blast through security and you name it, like metal detectors are going off like it's the 4th of July. And not one of them ever complained about it in any situation. It was just whatever, do what you got to do. They throw their legs back on and they're on their way. And that to me was, gee, Dan, if you need a lesson in life, I think that's right in front of your face. And that really changed the way I kind of look at things. And it's those subtle things, it's not always what you see, it's what you don't see that impresses me the most about them. Like, you think about it, like we get up every morning, we get out of bed, we walk to your kitchen, you make coffee. They get out, when they get out of bed, their workout begins. They got to put on legs. They got to be careful going up and down stairs because it can be very difficult. Just their day-to-day activity impresses the heck out of me, even before they put on hockey equipment and then amaze me and our staff out on the ice. Like they're special people. There's no doubt.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I found that too, just working, with the Florida guys that one week, I felt more uncomfortable. Like I'm like, and they're joking around with you. Like they, especially the more elite guys and girls, like they know like how uncomfortable you are. So they'll, like, hey, can you hold my leg for? And I'm like, listen, I can't even deal with this right now. So it's, you're making me, but I couldn't believe the competitiveness. And I think also the ability for them, the athletes that I worked with, to have the patience to actually explain how they do what they do, because they must get that question every day. Like, I just do it because I do this, I do that. Like you're saying, they're watching their nutrition, they're fiddling with their sticks and arranging their gloves, and Dan mentioned it earlier about the guys with the spikes on the sticks and how they maneuver, and they're just as OCD about where those spikes are located, like an able-bodied hockey player would be.
Yeah, just like you with whatever pattern stick you want, they're just as anal about it. There's no question.
Right.
And, like they'll come up to me in a practice and they'll go, Dan, I thought you played at a decent level in hockey. And I'll be like, yeah, I think I did. Why? What's the problem? He goes, well, you haven't made a decent pass all day. Like, seriously. Can you not see we have 2 sticks on the ice, choose one. That's the kind of heat I get on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. They're just, but you know what? To their credit, they're a little bit serious too. Like we do a lot of small area games. We do a lot of, puck movement drills. They don't skate backwards. So the sled hockey game is a lot about angling. Probably 75% of the game is angling. And, and support. It's real important that you support the puck carrier. You can't be, 50 feet away from the puck carrier in this sport. You really, to be successful at it, you have to be playing in a tighter, closer area with each other. So when we get into these competitions in practice, me and the other assistant coach, Corey, if we don't make good passes, they're all over us. Yeah. Like they're screaming at us. And I'm like, oh, simmer down, but then I have so much respect for that. They don't want to be a feel-good story. They want to be good.
Right.
And that's it.
Dan, it sounds to me as if coaching these athletes has brought you tremendous joy in ways that you probably never even imagined.
Yeah, it has. And it's like I said, it's the things that you don't see that impress me more than the things you do. And, like a lot of our players give back to their communities. And I've made my mistakes too. Like I think a lot of coaches have to learn from their mistakes. When I first started coaching, I thought I had all the answers, because I just kind of copied what my old coaches did. And, hey, I played hockey, so I got all the answers. And I found out the more I kept staying involved in the game, the less I knew. And I think I'm a way better coach now than I was 25 years ago. It's not even close, because I see the big picture, and these guys have really brought that to light. And, it's absolutely hilarious. Like our players, they agree on they get a little bit of funding for training, but along with that comes a player agreement. And so we had a meeting with our players, and this is probably one of the greatest mistakes I think I've made in sport. So they're reading it over and they're like, come on, Dan, like this is like we're disabled. Like a lot of us don't have legs. Why is there so many rules? What's the big deal? Like if I want to ski, or I want to go bowling, or I want to do this or whatever, like why do you have so many stipulations in this contract? And first of all, that's what lawyers do. I didn't write the thing. But I said, yeah, you guys are right. It's not like you're going to lose a leg water skiing or something like that. And then one of our players, Brody Royval, looks at me and goes, Dan, that's exactly how Jack lost his leg. And it's true. It was how he lost his leg. So I think that if you as a coach make a worse mistake than that, it's still going to be okay. And I think that's as big as you're going to make as far as talking to your players. But they got a real kick out of that, which was fantastic because it could have gone the other way, right? But the expectation for them and what it's done for me from, you know, a real joy of the game is a unique, thankful relationship for sure.
Well, I appreciate you telling us that story and making yourself vulnerable for a moment. You know, Dan, I often say on this show, this little quote of good coaches know everything and great coaches know nothing. That's kind of how I've always approached coaching. And I made the same mistake. I was a 22-year-old kid. I knew it all. And the older I get, the more I'm like, man, I didn't know anything back then. It's just a punk kid coaching. So listen, in the intro, I think I mentioned like 15 years and dates of championships and medals and things that you have accomplished. So look, as a journalist, I was taught never to ask, how did it feel when you won? Because it's probably quite undescribable. But I would love to hear just some stories or the experience of being at that level, winning, what it was like for you, what it was like for the players. And my gut's telling me that while special, it's probably in terms of elation, no different than winning the Stanley Cup. I always say that to people, that when you win something at a high level, it's an amazing feeling. That feeling is pretty similar no matter when you win and no matter what you're doing. But we'd love to hear, again, you have 15 years to choose from, whichever one you want. You can do all 15 if you want to be here for another couple hours, but it's up to you.
No, that's a real credit to the players. It's funny you say that because, you know, I told our guys, like, and we just won again in the Czech Republic in June, and it doesn't get old. You know, if something like that gets old, then you lack respect for your opponents. And, you know, especially when we play Canada and Russia, we can lose just as easily as we win. And we've been very fortunate, you know, like in Pyeongchang in 2018, I'll use this one as an example. You know, we were down 1-0 to Canada with 47 seconds left in the game. And one of their players, and our net was empty. One of their players picked up the puck. He just got inside our blue line and he got close to the top of the circles and he had a clear shot at our net. And this is the fine line that we walk, and he shoots it and it hits the post. So I went from, you know, oh my God, this is going to be a real tough loss for our team, to all of a sudden our guys gather the puck, and with 15 seconds left in the period, Declan Farmer scores to go into overtime. And then find another funny story, like especially with Declan and Brody, I don't know how they do it, but they're in such great shape. They stay out on the ice probably longer than they should. So we as coaches, there were in the overtime, Declan hung on to the puck, and he just, you know, the Canadian players were having a hard time getting to him, and he hung on to it. And we're like yelling, get a change. And just when we said that, he came off the half wall and roofed the puck just under the crossbar, and we win. And I'm like, stay out. So, yeah, it was that to me, you know, out of all of them, that one was the biggest thrill because of how we won it. It wasn't, you know, if you're going into a third period and you're up 4-1 and you win 5-2 or something, the writing's kind of on the wall. It's just a little different. But that was euphoric because we thought for sure that we were going to lose that game 2-0. And in the span of 40 seconds, we were gold medalists. And it's more to, like, for me personally, and we, as a staff, we say it to our players all the time, this is your team. What do you want it to look like? What do you guys want this to be? And when you get that kind of buy-in and then you see their faces after they win like that, you know, that to me was such a thrill. And for them, like, you know, I always say we had our kick at the can. We got to play. This is your time, your moment, you know, seize it. And that's probably the biggest thrill that I've had with the team was how we won that. And there's tons of other ones I can talk about. We've had so many great players come through our program. I don't want to disrespect any of them and their wins. You know, Vancouver in 2010, we weren't supposed to win. We were ranked 3rd in the world. So that was really cool to win a gold medal when we weren't supposed to. And then Russia was such a unique experience, you know, just, we were in lockdown the whole time and our guys just found a way to have fun. And so I could go on and on, but I would say those ones are kind of the highlights for me.
Do you think, Dan, internationally that, obviously like kind of like the women's sport, right? That Canada and the US drive that. And, do you find that internationally, those international bodies are finding ways to build the sled hockey sport to create more competition?
Well, that's our biggest,
guys.
yeah, it's a great question, Mike. That's our biggest challenge. And we have it on the women's side as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of teams other than Canada and the US playing on the women's side of sled hockey, which is really unfortunate because it's awesome to watch. When I first started, we were ranked third. It was always Canada or Norway, and then us and Japan. And that all changed in 2009, but we used to get thumped. I mean, I remember, playing Canada in these 3-game series and, being 0-9 in the season. And so we took our lumps in the beginning of all this. But, unfortunately, Russia went through the whole steroid issue and, performance enhancing drugs and all that, but they're finally back. They have a really good team. So now we're kind of a 3-headed monster instead of just 2. Some of the other programs have gotten older, and that's why they're struggling. And the reason we do so well is our grassroots and our youth programs are so strong. Now, there's a couple other countries that are trying to get there. The Czech Republic's trying to, increase growth. I'll share a funny story with you. The gentleman who runs the Japanese team, his name's Kojin, and he asked me a couple of years ago why our captain Andy Yohe stopped playing after Sochi. And I said, well, he's got a family now. He's getting older. He wants to get on with his life. And he goes, older? How old is he? I go, well, he's 34 or 35 years old. He goes, 35? He'd be rookie on my team. So it's funny. It's a funny story, but it's kind of painful too, because they're aging out of the game, and that's really tough. So we're lucky we have the numbers, and we're lucky we have the structure, and that's why our team's so good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, Dan, and it's not luck, right? It's great coaching, great people, great perseverance, and really the human spirit at its peak level. And you said this earlier, it's when you look at the things you don't have, you start to see things differently, right? And I think that's a testament to you and the entire USA Hockey sled program, what you've built there and developed. Look, what's funny is the story is not that different than USA Hockey in itself, is it? USA Hockey got thumped a ton until really after 80, and then it started to turn. And then in 2010 with the development model, it really started to turn upwards, on a hockey stick chart. But it's because we have great leaders in hockey in this country when it comes to things like the sled program and the US Development National Program. And people like Mike Benelli. Mike, I know you get all bashful here, but Mike is a great leader within the game in New York. He's doing his best not to smile right now. For those of you listening, he's literally stone-faced at his computer. There it is. Okay, he's smiling now. So I was going to keep going. And then people like Christy as well, who are just incredible parents, incredible community organizers. And this game is special across the board. And yes, like anything, you have a-holes in the game, but the game is special. I mean, the life lessons, the team work, the brotherhood, the sisterhood. I mean, the things you get out of this are incredible. And like you said, Dan, look, some of the people on the team are born with disabilities and they grow up in it. Some of them don't expect to be disabled and they get into it and it becomes part of a family. Stories like this, teams like this are inspiring to me. That's why I said people like you, the players, you're my heroes, right? You are the bright spot on humanity that we don't talk about enough, right? We only talk about the negative, right? So there's good out there. So I'm completely out of questions. So I'm going to throw it back to Mike and Christy and see if you guys have anything in closing. But Dan, I want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing some of these, and thank you for all you've done for the game of hockey, you and your athletes.
No, I greatly appreciate your comments, Lee. I just, I wish I could take credit. They're just, like I said, I think when you empower people, when you let them do what they're good at, and we've done that with this group of players, and we hope that, and I think every youth hockey parent, every youth hockey coach should feel the same. All your efforts, everything you go into it, from driving kids to the rink to sitting in freezing arenas watching a game or a practice. from the time they were so small, you know, and getting up at 5 in the morning or whatever to get them to the rink. That the ability to let it be theirs, you know, don't look at it like, hey, I made all this sacrifice, I expect this to happen, because that's not how it works. It's the great people like Mike and Christy that are at rinks all the time. And you know, that to me is what makes our game so great. A kid who's really good is going to find their way. They're going to play somewhere at an elite level, but it's all the kids that play our game and what they get out of it. And for me, like I would never have learned how to even just cooperate with other people if it wasn't for hockey. Like, you don't go to elementary school and you learn, you know, cooperation or, you know, credit card debt or divorce or any of those things, you know, like you go and you get this syllabus of homework and you leave. And, you know, thankfully things have changed, I think, in some good ways. Like, you know, I think kids hopefully nowadays are finding better ways to you know, clean up their differences. I remember when I was a little kid, like if you got into it with someone, you had to fight them in the church parking lot after school. And, you know, you had 8 hours to think about it. And you know, by the time 3 o'clock's rolling around, you're scared and you're like, oh my God, like, I'm gonna have to do this. So I think what I'm really getting at is it's so important nowadays for people to create the opportunity, and if they're not coaching, back off and enjoy it, because that's what your kids really want you to do. And you know, I have a son who plays minor league baseball right now, and he's a tremendous athlete. And I met his managers about a month ago, and I just went up to him and I said, they said, oh, you're Will's dad. Sit down, you know. And I didn't really want to do it because just growing up, I didn't want to be that parent. And I just said to them, you're going to get one word out of me, guys, and that's it. And they're like, really? What's that? And I said, thank you. Really? I said, yeah, I want to thank you for what you're doing for my son. And I think if parents and people look at the game a little more like that, and the effort that people are putting in for their son or daughter, then I think you'll get the big picture. And what it really is it's an amazing time in their lives. Let them enjoy it.
I'm so glad you said that. And hopefully we've all learned those lessons, especially after this year of COVID when hockey was taken away from a lot of us. I cannot wait to jump back into the season. You know, my daughter's first game is in a couple of weeks. I've already made the hotel reservation. I cannot wait to get back in that rink. And I've missed it so much. Sorry, the dog's barking. We've got a little thunderstorm going here in Central New York. But in closing, I do want to say, you know, if you ever need inspiration, look no farther than a sled hockey team, because each and every one of those athletes on that team represents stories of perseverance, incredible stories. And I look to Colin Gooley, who's from our area. You know, he was diagnosed with bone cancer at the age of 7. His leg was amputated. And his parents, and he wanted something that he could do. He wanted to stay, you know, competitive and be athletic. Sled hockey, he took it all the way up to nationals. Our entire community rallied around that young man. We're so proud of him, and he just inspired all of us. So, Dan, thank you for leading the charge.
Yeah, you know, you bring up it's so easy to talk about Colin because he's such a fine young man and a great person. And yeah, he's that story, you know, that kid that doesn't look at life like that. Like I would say he's probably the most polite, kind person that we've ever had on our roster. And that's an amazing trait, you know, and he pays it forward. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going to Skinny Atlas to help him and Chuck and our head coach, David Hoff, with a sled camp. And I can't wait. There's a couple of kids there that it's a little payback for me that smoked me in ping pong last year or 2 years ago at the camp. So I'm brushing up on it. Like, I can't wait to see these kids. So I'm going
to stop by and say hello, because that's right in the back of the bus.
That would be great.
So Dan, a couple of things before we close out here. About just over a year from the Winter Olympics happening. What's next for the USA Sled program? What's the next up on the docket?
Yeah, we have our first camp in Madison, Wisconsin, early October. Then we have a competition in St. Louis against Canada at the end of October. And then we're hoping the borders, you know, stay open There's a great tournament in Nova Scotia that we're playing in. It'll probably be us, Canada, Russia, and the Czech Republic. That's kind of a pre-warmer. And then we'll play, we will do a residency program with our team where we spend probably 6 weeks together in Nashville. They've been, the Predators have been really kind to our team to allow them to skate, and they've treated our guys, in a real fantastic way. So for us to be able to get this team together, like usually we're together, between 4 and 8 days a month. So when we can get our players together for 6 straight weeks, the results are amazing.
I imagine.
So, and that only happens in a Paralympic year. But, I heard Beijing's going to be a bubble, which is tough, because our players don't always get to play in front of huge crowds. But at the Paralympics, we've averaged, 12,000 attendees at a game. And it's such a thrill for our players to get to play in front of those kind of crowds. So, but they're thrilled to play, and they can't wait, to have things taken away for a year. I've noticed it across the board, even with our coaches. We had a level 5 in Duluth 2 weeks ago, and everyone was so happy just to see each other and talk hockey, and that's what makes it such an amazing group of people. Like when you're around hockey people, like you're around people with enthusiasm, great humor, and everybody missed each other, and they don't even know each other. It's just that hockey, that bind that we all have in such a great game.
Well, everyone on this show is an American, so we're pulling for you to get another gold medal for the USA, and all the athletes that might be listening to this. We love you. We thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for our country, both on and off the ice, and we appreciate it. And then, Dan, the last question, obviously, an obvious one is, if there's anybody listening to this that's interested in getting involved with USA Sled Hockey or sled hockey in general, what are the resources? What are the websites? Where should they go to find out more information?
Yeah, they can certainly go to USA Hockey's website. We have people in our building they can contact who can kind of set them up in the district that they live in, because they might be surprised that there might be a local program only a mile or 2 away from them. They just never heard about it, or they coach or skate in a different rink and they don't know what's going on 5 miles from them. So that's probably the best way to do it. And if I could add, don't be afraid to work with people with disabilities. It's once you get past the initial awkwardness, and everybody goes through it, and just remember, they just want to be a hockey player just like you, and find your common ground. It's you guys mentioned what's it like to coach these guys. Our national team, when I coach a midget hockey team, I would say our national team does every single drill a real good midget hockey team could do. And even first year junior players would be amazed at what our players can do. So I think if you can throw yourself into it 100% and just help out and see how things go. And as soon as you get out on the ice, once you're with them and you're patient about it, that's when the reward starts to kick in, I think.
I love it, Dan. Well, I'll tell you what, man, this hour has flown by. You've been a great guest, and I'd love to get some of the athletes on this show in the future as well. And hopefully we can work something out to have them on. We'll let them take their shots at you, and then we'll have you back on in a few years where there's a few more years I have to put on your bio, and we can go back and forth for years to come and make it fun.
I would be happy to get that set up for you guys if you want to hear some stories.
100%. I can pick 4 guys that'll entertain your audience into the ground, and you'll be like, oh my God, I get what he means now about, not becoming overly a better person. But I'm happy to help out with that. I appreciate you guys having me on here. And anytime we can spread the gospel, not just about sled hockey, but about our great game of hockey, I'm all in 100%. And I appreciate, Mike, what you've done. I know what you've done, and I've done a bunch of clinics with Mike throughout the years. And Christy, it's nice to meet you. And thank you and Lee for what you guys are doing for the sport. And, to help educate parents and coaches and young kids is a special thing you're doing. So keep it up. Yeah, thank you, Dan. This has been wonderful. That is going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Our guest, Dan Brennan, you were phenomenal. For Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano-Burns, I'm Lee Elias. You can check out every single episode. We've done over 40 of these now at ourkidsplayhockey.com or just wherever podcasts are heard. You can tell your Alexa, and Alexa will play it. Whatever you want to do. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. And thank you so much for listening. This has been Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care. We'll see you next time.